The Bowen family began Heartland potato chips in South Canterbury after their local chipping factory closed down. The Bowens had been long-term potato suppliers to the factory, and when the closure was announced in 2009, they decided to buy the building, install new equipment and become both grower and processor.
We've got 1,150 acres here on the Rowry property and about 190 odd up at Coldstream, which is the top side of the Rangitata River. And we grow potatoes, wheat, barley, grass seed and some maize, and went to quite a number of cows. I was brought up in the area on a dairy farm down at Milford. That was what Dad did, and then when this property came on the market in 1975, we decided to buy that because at that stage I was starting to get into the potatoes. Started off with the fish and chip shop, and then we started to get into processing with Watties in the early days when they were at Timaru, and then that was part of Bluebird. So it took me a wee while to get into the processing side of it. One of the crisping factories closed in Timaru, which I was a major supplier to. At that stage they were using a third of our potatoes, so it was going to be quite a drop in area if we didn't do something. It was quite a bold thing to do, and you know, I talked about it with the family before we decided to do it, and they were all in favour and could see that. And of course we had other people that we'd asked, a salesperson and the ex-manager. It was no good doing it unless I had some good men behind me. We still supply to other processors with French fries, and it's just gradually building up slowly as the markets open up. All the family have got shares in it, and they're all as enthusiastic about the whole venture as Adrian and I are. James is heavily involved with us, and we've got two other daughters, and one's in Christchurch, and she's involved with the chip side of it with some merchandising and some sales, and the other daughter spends some time in the office on the farm and at the factory. This is courage potato. It's reddish coloured skin with yellow flesh inside. You wouldn't want them much bigger than that. If you got them too much bigger than that, well, they make too big of a chip, and then you got a job to seal the bag off if the chips are too big. So from that size downwards probably is the ultimate for the crisping variety. If you cut it and it's quite hard to cut, you know that the solids are quite good. We always take them back to the yard and do a solids test on them. But a nice texture, and that's got a wee bit of a yellowy flesh to it, so once it goes through the processing at the factory, it turns out to be a nice chip, really. It's a good main crop variety for crisping. It holds its sugars right, its shape's right for it all. They're not a storage one, but they're good for off the paddock processing. Well, if the sugar content builds up in the potatoes, well then the chip will burn, and people don't want burnt potato chips. So it's pretty critical really for processing point of view. We've certainly had our learning curves. And it's a good way to learn, I suppose, by your own mistakes, isn't it? So you don't always get it right. No, you don't. There's always things that try you out. It's farming. We're in amongst the elements, and we've got to deal with what we're dealt with, I suppose.
This time of the year we're filling all our stores for supply to our own factory through the rest of the season. Well, that was an egg rear. The key is to get them dried out and then cure them, which is healing any cuts or nicks. Hopefully by doing that you can store for a long period of time without any problems. The straw we put at the front basically is a wall, and because of the doors there may be a draft right at the front, but basically it's a wall. It's keeping them in the dark and at a pretty set temperature. Me and Dad must have something pretty special. We get on pretty well, and I think communication's the key to probably our success. We're talking all the time, and that way staff aren't getting confused messages either, I suppose. So we both know what's happening. My role's out here on the field and on the farm, although I do keep a pretty watchful eye on, and a great interest in what's happening in town.
I was a supervisor originally on the site, and I used to manage most of the storage, and that's where I made contact with Ray, and he was one of the suppliers. He used to pop up once in a while on the line, and that's how we got chatting, and that's how we got pretty friendly over that period. So the point of difference we had to come up with was we went with the slice or the cut, because that's the old-fashioned wavy cut. Then we thought we'd better look at what additives we put into it. So the oil is different from everybody else. It's a sunflower canola blend, and the flavours we use are gluten-free. So basically we had to get a point of difference to break the market. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't have got into the marketplace. It would have been really awkward with the foodstuffs and the progressive guys. All our potatoes come in 1 tonne bins, so they go into a bin tipper, then it's sipped into a hopper, and it goes through the hopper into the stoner, and that's like a water pump. The stones drop out the bottom, then they get augered up to the top, then they go into a transport belt, into a peeler, and from the peeler they'll go through onto a grading table. A guy there that takes out any bruising, greening, or any defect that's out of the spec, then that'll go down into what we call the accumulating hopper. And that elevator is actually where the line begins. That's where you control the line speed. So from that hopper, from that elevator, the potatoes go up into the slicer, then they get what they call a pre-wash, then they go through a washer onto a big shaker, which takes out slithers or slices or anything that's too small. Then it goes into what we call a hot wash or a blancher. The retention time on that can be up to 4 minutes if you choose. Then they go over a dewater shaker. That ensures that you don't have too wet a product going into your fryer, and that helps the oil. And then it goes through the fryer, which takes between, say, maximum 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. And it goes over what we call a defatter belt. We've got 2 defatter belts. One's used for removing fines again, cooked fines, and the second one helps take out the oil. Then it goes up to the elevator, then it goes to the sorting room. A normal Joe Blow will come along and say you're frying those chips up, and it's not really. You're actually drying the chip out, and that's what's so hard about our process. We're taking the moisture out of the potato chips. We're looking for a target of about 1.30% moisture, and that'll be the maximum of about 2%, just under 2%. So you're actually drying the product, not frying it out. In the South Island, because people are pretty parochial, we're doing really well. We've had a bit of a downturn because of the opposition put our chip up against us, but it didn't seem to affect us. We made inroads into Wellington, and we're also now in Auckland, so we're just waiting to see what happens there.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.